Hello everyone. Today we are going to see about anatomy of nose. The anatomy of nose primarily focusing on breathing, smelling and filtering air. Anatomically, the nose is divided into two major structures, the external structure and the internal structure. The external structure is visible portion. The internal structure is non-visible portion. The external structure contain nostrils, also called nares, the two openings at the base of the nose that allows air to enter and exist. This is the enter point of the respiratory system. They are separated by the nasal septum. Nasal septum divides the right side of the nose and the left side of the nose. Next we are moving into nasal bridge. The nasal bridge is the upper portion of the nose which is supported the bony and the cartilage. Here is the image of nostrils and the nasal bridge. Nostrils helps for the entry of air. The nasal bridge helps for the support. Next we are moving into nasal tip. Nasal tip is the lower softer part of the nose made mostly of cartilage. Next we are moving into nasal columella. The strip of tissue that separates two nostrils is called as nasal columella. Next we are moving into internal structure which is not visible. In this internal structure, first we are going to see about nasal cavity. Cavity means empty space. Nasal cavity means the hollow space inside the nose dividing into two chambers by nasal septum. That one is right and the another one is left. The nasal cavity is lined with mucous membrane and contains tiny hair-like structures called cilia. In our nose, the hair-like structure is called cilia. Majorly, it helps to prevent the entry of microorganism furtherly into the respiratory system. It gives protection to our respiratory system. Next is nasal passages. Passages means pathways. The passages within the nasal cavity where air flows through. Superior, middle, inferior nasal concave. Curved bone structures that protruded into the nasal cavity which increase the surface area of the nasal cavity to help warm, humidify and filter air. This particular surface of area is to help warm, humidify and filtering air by creating a particular space inside the nasal cavity. Next we are moving into sinuses. Sinuses means air filled space, also called as airbags. The airbags helps us to reduce the weight of the skull. The skull bones connected to the nasal cavity, they help reduce the weight of the skull, warm and humidify air and produce mucus. The major function of the sinuses is to reduce the weight of the skull. The sinus is divided into four types. The first one is frontal sinus which is present in the frontal region. The second one is ethmoid sinus which is present in the present below the ethmoid bone. The another one is sphenoid sinus which is present under the sphenoid bone. The another one is maxillary sinus. Here is the image of the frontal ethmoid maxillary sphenoid sinuses which helps to reduce the weight of the skull. Next we are moving into supporting structures of the eye. The supporting structures, the first one is nasal septum, a wall of cartilage and bone that divides the left and right nasal cavity. The major function of the nasal septum is to divide the left and right nasal cavity. And the next one is cilia, tiny hair-like structures in the nasal passage, helps move mucus out of the nose, trapping dust and microbes and other particles, which gives protection to our respiratory system. Next one is mucous membrane, a lining that covers the nasal cavity which produces mucus to trap particles and humidify the air. The major functions of the nose is first one is breathing. The nose serves as the primary route of air intake. It filters, moistens and warms air before it enters the lungs. The next one is mucus protection, is to trap and remove the dust, allergens and pathogens. The next one is filtration. The cilia and nose moves mucus containing trapped particles towards the throat where it is either swallowed or expelled. The next one is air conditioning. The turbinates increase the surface area for air to warm and humidify before it reaches the lungs. The major function of the Nose is called as olfaction, a sense of smell. The olfactory receptors located in the upper part of the nasal cavity detect airborne molecules. These receptor cells send signals to the brain when they are interrupted as different smells. Olfactory bulb located just above the nasal cavity process the sensory input relayed to the brain. The nose also helps for the speech, resonance during speech. The sinuses and nasal cavity are the resonating chambers for the voice, affecting tone and sound quality. Next one is defense mechanism. In this defense mechanism, the mucociliary clearance helps the nasal cavity move into coordinated waves to push mucus out of the nose, containing trapped particles. Immune response. Mucus also contains antibodies and enzymes that can neutralize the pathogens. Uh, Regulation of airflow. The next one is nasal cavity can constrict or dilate to regulate airflow based on factors like breathing patterns or environmental conditions such as cold or dry air. The major muscles of the nose is procerus nasalis, depressor septi nasi. These are all the major muscles of the nose which supports the structure. Next we are moving into blood supply. The nose receives blood from the external carotid artery and the internal carotid artery. These are all the major arteries which supplies blood to the nose. Next one is nerve supply. The most important nerve for the nose is olfactory nerve. It is one of the cranial nerve and also trigeminal nerve. Autonomic control is provided by parasympathetic and sympathetic fibers that regulate glandular secretion and vascular tone in the nasal cavity. Next, we are moving into applied aspects. The one is nasal obstruction. Conditions like nasal polyps, deviated septum, or inflammation from allergies can block the airflow. The next is sinusitis. Inflammation or infection of the paranasal sinuses can affect their quality to filter and humidify air. The next one is rhinitis. Rhinitis means inflammation of the nasal lining, which can lead to symptoms like congestion, running nose, and sneezing. These are all the applied aspects of the nose: nasal obstruction, sinusitis, and rhinitis.